Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at Tier 10 Premium British Light Cruiser HMS Plymouth. This ship has recently been added to the game for super testers, and I guess for CCs in the sense that I could take this thing out and play it as if I were a super tester. I'm not, so pass. But we can look at the ship in port, we can talk through the stats, we can dig around under the hood and talk about what it may or may not do well. If nothing else, it gives us a first chance to look over the ship and see what it is they're bringing into the game before it arrives. So let's get to it. Starting at the top, as we always do with survivability. Hit point pool of 41,000 HP. This is bad. Right? This is less than Minotaur, which I was really surprised to see. Colbert, Tier 10 Premium French Cruiser, Light Cruiser, Colbert, still wins the category for the least amount of HP for a cruiser at Tier 10, but Plymouth is not that far behind. This is further complicated for reasons we'll discuss when we get to her Consumables loadout. Her armor scheme is nearly identical to that of Tier 7 Tech Tree Cruiser Fiji. You see here she's got 114 millimeters on the belt. That is, in the British Tech Tree, the best belt armor of these light cruisers, and that is found at Tier 7 on HMS Fiji. Every other ship in the line has less than this. It's not amazing. It's not anything to write home about, regardless of what tier you're playing in, but it's interesting, and you're going to see a lot more parallels between this ship and Fiji, and a little bit versus Edinburgh as we go down. Now, one thing I do want to point out, she does have a fully submerged citadel. So now this is nice because Fiji is again, drawing the similarities with Fiji is the last ship in the Tech Tree line that has a fully submerged citadel. When you get to Edinburgh, Neptune, and Minotaur, they all have this raised section of citadel in the middle right here that sticks up well above the waterline. Plymouth does not suffer this, okay? You can see here she does have this thin citadel deck armor through the center, but when you put this kind of her casemate armor back over it, it is armored from above here over the machinery spaces with that same 51 millimeter plating that you see elsewhere. And that's a little thicker over the magazines, right? So the idea here, for armor scheme, if they're dropping bombs through this area, you've got this 51 millimeter deck to get through, and then on the machinery space, you've still got this additional 25 millimeter deck to get through. Up here, underneath the bridge and everything, you don't have that extra armor deck. That's all. But her armor scheme, like I said, again, if you're looking for a comparison armor scheme, Fiji is the closest comparison that we have. Maneuverability and concealment. Plymouth is slow, right? I've got a speed flag on here. This says 33.1 knots. Her base speed is 31.5 knots. This ties her with Hindenburg as the slowest Tier 10 cruiser. Rudder shift, you see there, 10.1 seconds. Pretty average. But what's really going to foul up her handling is how god-awful slow she is. Presumably, she has the same really good acceleration characteristics that are found in the rest of the British cruiser line. I don't know that. I haven't played this ship, but yeah, so presumably she does, which would be nice. I mean, she probably needs it with this kind of low speed. Concealment-wise, she is very nearly, almost as stealthy as Minotaur. She gives up about 100 meters of stealth to her Tech Tree cousin when you fully rig this ship out. You're seeing here 10.2. I do not have a captain on this ship. That drops down to 9.2 when you put a concealment expert captain in. The difference here is that Minotaur with that 9.1 detection, the 10-kilometer radar, she can quote-unquote stealth radar, meaning that if she's spotted on the surface, she can push her little magic button and counter-spot whatever it is that's lighting her up in return. Plymouth can almost do this, right? Her radar, she has 9-kilometer range radar instead of 10, and her surface detection is 9.2 kilometers. So most destroyer players will still get caught out by this, particularly in the early game when everybody's kind of racing towards caps and closing in on each other. Against unsuspecting destroyer players, or if you catch them out at the right time, that radar can, of course, be catastrophic at those kinds of ranges with this British AP. There's a reason that I play Radar Minotaur almost exclusively. I love trolling destroyers with that ship. But it does mean that she cannot stealth radar the way her Tech Tree cousin can. Main battery. The comparison to Fiji really continues here when I go to talk about Plymouth's main battery. These are the exact same guns mounted by Fiji and Edinburgh over in the Tech Tree. These 152 millimeter, 50 caliber Mark 23 barrels. These are the same shells. as Fiji and Edinburgh. It's the same shell performance as Fiji and Edinburgh. Velocity, penetration, so on and so forth. Okay, she even has the same max range as Fiji. Well, close enough, right? Fiji's 15.4. You see their Plymouth coming in at 15.3. All that Her Majesty's Navy has done here is to pack an extra barrel into Fiji's turrets and mount them on a hull that has more beam due to the increased displacement. You see there, these are now quadruple barrel turrets instead of the triples that are found on all of the other various British cruisers that mount this particular gun. Even the overall length of Plymouth and Fiji is eerily similar, but Plymouth is wider in the beam. You can see it when you toggle between the two ships in port. In short, if you want to know what Plymouth's guns are going to feel like in a Tier 10 game, go grab your Fiji or your Edinburgh and get up-tiered. Play until you get up-tiered into a Tier 10 game. You don't have to wait. You can find out exactly what it's going to feel like to fire these guns. That may sound like I'm mocking these guns. Don't interpret it that way. These guns are perfectly capable of wrecking enemy destroyers and chewing up battleships and cruisers with full pin damage at Tier 10. I do it all the time in my Edinburgh. So there's nothing wrong with the guns. She has lots of them, but the range is something that you end up constantly fighting. At 15.4 kilometer range can be a real challenge. Torpedoes. Once again, Plymouth falls a little short of her tech tree cousin Minotaur. She only packs one quad launcher on each side of the ship. Okay, these are the same torpedoes mounted by basically every British cruiser starting at Edinburgh on up to the top of the line. 10-kilometer range, 62 knot speed, etc., etc. These are really good torpedoes, to be perfectly honest. I love getting the chance to use these, and I constantly find myself landing torpedo hits in places where you wouldn't expect because, like the British destroyers, the British light cruisers can single fire these torpedoes, which allows you to do some really fun things with them. She just gets fewer of them than Minotaur, right? Minotaur gets 2 quad racks on each side. You see here Plymouth only getting 1 quad rack on each side of the ship. A defense, I'm going to say it one more time, she ain't Minotaur, right? The Fiji and Edinburgh hulls, which is kind of basically what you're looking at here, are not known for their AA capabilities. In this branch, you don't really get like punishing AA until Neptune at Tier 9 and Minotaur at Tier 10. It should really not shock you then that Plymouth's AA is solid, but kind of unremarkable. Yeah, she'll shoot down some planes, but she's not going to strike fear into enemy carriers the way that a properly outfitted Minotaur does. Four flak bursts is pretty pathetic for Tier 10. The continuous damage is nothing to write home about. So, yeah. One thing that I thought was interesting, not really big deal, but interestingly, Plymouth is one of the only British ships I can recall that mixes both the 40mm pom-pom here with the 40mm Bofors. Most British ships go all in on one or the other, as in they were using the pom-pom until they changed over to the Bofors. Plymouth here mounts both, which is not significant, but just interesting. Consumables. Now, here is where we get to really have an interesting conversation about what the hell it is we think they're doing with this ship, okay? Because unlike Minotaur, Plymouth, okay, let's back up. Minotaur is forced to choose between smoke and radar. Her last slot here, she has to choose. She gets smoke generator or radar. You see here, Plymouth gets both by default. Just like Belfast, just like the kind of forthcoming Belfast 43, even though Belfast 43 right now, last I looked, still had the little short duration smoke. It's worth noting, however, and I briefly touched on this earlier, this is the same radar that Tier 10 American light cruiser USS Worcester gets, right? This is 9-kilometer radar, not 10. Minotaur gets the 10-kilometer radar. It is the same duration, 40 seconds base, buffed at 48 there, because you can see I have the surveillance radar consumable mounted. Upgrade mounted up in the upgrade slots. She also gets standard Tier 10 Hydro with that 5-kilometer range. Now, the big thing I want to point out here, though, is the heel. Okay, we talked about this when talking about her health pool. Now we want to talk about the other half of that equation. This is not, this is not the fancy high-tier British cruiser heel that regenerates 40 or 45 or 50% of the ship's health pool when you push the button. No, this is the standard heel that every other Tier 10 cruiser, every other non-British Tier 10 cruiser in the game gets, right? This regens about 16 to 18% of the ship's hull with the flags and whatever other things you can use to buff it, okay? This means that you on paper, like as I look over the ship, I'm kind of like, there are things that I can't, like risks that I cannot take with this ship that I can take with my Minotaur, right? Because this ship doesn't handle as well as Minotaur. She regenerates less health, and her armor scheme is, well, it's just as weak as Minotaur's against the things that are going to be shooting her, right? Those big enemy super cruisers, heavy cruisers, battleships, whatever. However, due to the shorter range radar, it's going to feel like you're forced, or you need to take bigger risks to put this ship into positions that it's going to feel impactful, in my opinion. It feels like a catch-22, right? Kind of you're damned if you do, you're going to get punished harder, and you can regen less. But if you don't, you're not getting up to where that radar can be useful and impactful in a match. So tough to figure this one out. I was really excited when they announced the ship. I love the British cruiser line. But right now, this ship just, looking it over like this, it looks like just like an up-jumped Fiji, when we already have something in the tech tree that is, in my opinion, superior to this ship, right? The only thing that Plymouth really brings over Minotaur is that smoke radar combo. I mean, technically she has more armor, but the things that are going to be shooting you don't care about your armor anyway, so it's kind of moot, right? In every other category, damage per minute, rate of fire, torpedo armament, anti-aircraft, stealth, handling, top speed, Minotaur beats the pants off this ship. So I honestly have no idea what purpose it's meant to serve, what role she fills on a team that you wouldn't already prefer to have a Minotaur to do. I don't know. I can't wrap my brain around it yet. Of course, I haven't played this ship. That's a personal choice for me. We are allowed to play these ships, but I don't, because I don't want to feel like I'm withholding information from you guys, right? I'm not allowed to talk about the experience of playing it. So instead, I go in the port and I just talk about the experience of looking it over. And right now, I mean, she's an interesting ship. I mean, if you enjoy playing Fiji and you want to take Fiji into tier 10, hey, we've got a ship for you. But like, why? Why? I don't know where they're going with this. So I'll be really curious to see how she evolves during testing, because I think right now, to me, this ship feels like it doesn't have a home. I would much rather have a Minotaur. So we'll just see what they do, what kind of changes they make during testing. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Wash your hands, be safe out there, and I'll catch you next time.